So level 1. Alright, google.com. Here's a logo, here's the search bar. Oh, and here's the buttons. Why are you still waiting? Well, it's because you were missing this little line of text at the bottom. See, when Google launched, it was incredibly minimalistic compared to all the other search engines out there. But because of this, they had a problem. When they started making user tests in the early 2000s with Stanford students, the students would sit there for 45 seconds staring at the page, waiting for it to finish loading, even though it was fully loaded. And that's because all the information was at the top. So how did they fix it? Well, with this, a copyright notice that has no legal need to be there, but it was put there only to let you know that the page has finished loading. See, this is only level 1 of the 7 levels of the insane rabbit hole that is designing and building tech products. And these levels are what makes the difference between products that feel really bad, that you hate using, and products that end up generating billions of dollars in revenue and that end up changing the world. We're gonna go from uncovering the smallest details to the entire product strategies of some of the biggest tech companies in the world. But even here at level 1, there's so much more that you don't see behind the tech that you use every day. Take a look at this. This is a nice rounded interface. So here, for these checkboxes, we're gonna match the style. We're gonna make them round. But now you see that there's a problem. The app feels broken. And that's because by making these round, we made them look like something else that we're used to. Radio buttons, where you can only select one option at a time. This super small difference in how rounded these boxes are completely change how we interpret what we see and what we think we can do in this screen. And that's because we have this knowledge in our brain that got reinforced over thousands of times using technology that this means only one option and this means that you can have many. Or take a look at this. Well, of course, this is a link to something. Duh. Well, no. Turns out it was just some blue underlined text. And the reason this felt off is that we were missing this. The mouse cursor changing from the regular arrow to the little hand that says, hey, there's an action here. This might seem like a small detail, but without this, our interfaces would be completely unusable. Like for example, trying to drag some panel without the cursor becoming their size one. Without this small visual detail on your cursor, you simply wouldn't be able to use any desktop computer, and that's why this has been around from the beginning, since 1987, when it was invented by Bill Atkinson for the Macintosh app HyperCard, and it's stuck around to this day. Oh, and all these interactions that you're seeing, I built them as full working prototypes using Magic Patterns, the sponsor of this video. More about it later. But take a look at these. These are files on your computer, but the file names are really long. Now, usually when you have a really long string on an app, this happens. It gets cut and these dots, which are called ellipses, appear to tell you that, hey, there's more. But now, with this, we cannot see which one is the file version, for example. Say V1 or V2, which usually is stuff that's at the end of the file name. We cannot put the ellipsis at the beginning either, because otherwise we lose the file name altogether. So, for example, here in macOS, when we try to reduce the size of the window, the file names get the ellipsis in the center, and letters get progressively chipped away on each side of the ellipsis centered in the word. So you can see the start of the file name and the end of the file name. So this means that someone had to manually go in and write all the code that calculates how many letters to chip away at each side of the ellipsis just to make sure this happens. By the way, that someone is Scott Jensen, who built this, again, for Apple in the 80s. See, designing tech is not just about making things look nice. These seemingly small visual details won't get noticed by 99% of people, but it's what makes our tech usable. But yeah, sometimes they are there just because they're fun. Like, for example, you drag the Google Street View yellow guy, and you can see that he's actually holding on to the cursor and reacting to gravity as you move him around. Why? Well, why not? And now let's start to go up a level, because that's when things start to get interesting. So say you're on a call with your bank. They're telling you there's a suspicious activity on your account, and they need to verify some information. So you open your banking app to check, and you see this. Revolut is not calling you. The people that built this app made it so that it's detecting when you're on a phone call and when you're opening the app at the same time. And because one of the most common scams is someone pretending to be your bank and asking you to do something in the app while they're on the phone with you. Do not redeem! Do not redeem the card! Revolut just tells you, whoever's on the phone, well, it's not us. And this is what level 2 is all about. It's not just how things look, it's the interactions and how they behave. And more importantly, it's about building behaviors that feel human. Like take Google Maps. Your phone has a touchscreen and it's perfect for moving around this map. You can just drag your finger around. But zooming in still requires you to pinch the screen, so it requires two hands. We're usually trying to navigate around, we're on a bike, where it's the worst possible time to require us to pinch stuff. So you end up doing this weird contortionism just to zoom in. But actually in Google Maps, you can double tap and hold and drag your finger up and down to zoom in and out with one finger. You can actually do it in almost all the applications where you can pinch to zoom. The first time I learned about this, I was like, I'm sorry, what? But the problem with this is that while it definitely goes into the genius category, there is no way to know that you can actually do this. Most people don't even know. But one interaction that instead gets used billions of times every single day is this. You know, when you drag down the top of a list to refresh. This interaction is incredibly intuitive and it removes the need for an additional refresh button. But while this looks totally innocuous, today this feature is used by the biggest social media companies on the planet, paired with infinite scrolling feeds like Instagram, to show you something new every time you refresh. And this one simple interaction is probably responsible for billions of dollars of revenue in ads on these feeds. But now let's go up a level once again. Because in 2008, music streaming had a problem. Piracy was everywhere. People were illegally downloading songs all over the place. And if I wanted to purchase my entire current Spotify library legally on iTunes back then, it would have run me $3,800. And I would have to synchronize all these songs manually on all of my devices. And that's when Spotify came in. But they had a problem. See, they started with this promise of instant music streaming. Just choose a track and immediately listen to it. But the problem is that internet speeds back then, especially mobile, weren't anywhere near as fast as they are today. They tried what anyone would. Just host the songs on their servers, and anytime someone needs the song, just stream it down to the device. And it was atrocious. It could take from 30 seconds to a full minute for a song to start playing. So that's when they had an idea. They bought a company that actually powered piracy, and that you might remember called uTorrent, and sold uTorrent almost immediately. But the reason they did this is to get this one guy, Ludwig Strigus. And he rebuilt Spotify's infrastructure at the time using the same technology that powered piracy, peer-to-peer. See, when you played a song, it came from three places at once: Spotify servers, your own cache, and other Spotify users near you. A 2010 study found that only 8.8% of the music came from Spotify servers, 36% came from other users, and the rest was smartly downloaded already on your device. They took the exact technology that the music industry were suing people over and used it to build a legal alternative. And as a user, you never noticed. You just clicked on a song and it worked. See, most people think that great products are built around great technology, but most of the times it's the opposite that happens. You have a great idea for how the perfect interaction and experience looks like, and then you find the technology that makes it possible. Because the ones that really matter are those that make incredible experiences possible, but also where the technology disappears and you never see it. But as we get to level 4, this is where we start to get into the really powerful laws that control how tech products are designed and built, and how they can also be used to manipulate you. So you just finished an episode on Netflix. The usual cliffhanger, credits roll, and 3, 2, what? The next episode already started. See, this was an example of level 4 product design. And it's something that seems small, but it's incredibly powerful to control the behavior of millions of users, both in a good and in a bad way. Defaults. Oh look, I got ghosted by a 10 out of 10 on both iMessage and WhatsApp. Now, other than the fact that I need more Riz, there's something else going on here. On WhatsApp, read receipts are on by default, but on iMessage you instead choose if you want them or not, which for the most part would mean that people turn them off, since when presented with the choice, users tend to choose the option that gives out less information about them on average. Now, this might seem like a small difference, but since most people never change their settings, this creates completely different social dynamics. On WhatsApp, seen without a reply is loaded. You saw my message, why didn't you respond? On iMessage, nobody knows if you read it. Same feature, different default, different relationship. This is called default bias, and it's not just in your tech. This is a chart of the percentage of organ donors in different European countries. Try to guess what is the difference between the first and the second group. Well, the only difference is the default choice. In Austria, the default is to donate, and you opt out of donating. While in Denmark, you need to opt in to donate. And this is, well, default bias. But here is where defaults become worth billions of dollars. Have you ever wondered why did Google buy Android? Spent billions to make it a worldwide mobile operating system only to give it away for free? Or why did they build Chrome? Well, not because they love making browsers or operating systems, but because whoever controls the platform can set the defaults, including the search engine, which they set to Google, where they make their money. And for the devices they don't control, Google pays Apple $20 billion a year just to be the default option on Safari. They estimated that they would lose 60 to 80% of iPhone search traffic if they didn't do this. Not because people would switch to Bing, but because people just use whatever is already there. Now, see all these examples and visuals that I've shown you in this very video. Well, these are real working components made with the sponsor of this video, Magic Patterns, because it's built exactly for this. See, Magic Patterns is not about building entire apps from scratch, but it's about allowing builders like me to quickly try different designs, iterations, and components with natural language just by chatting. If you notice, all the examples I made in this video were also in the same visual style. And that's because with Magic Patterns, you can set your product styling, colors, and visuals, and have it follow it when prototyping. You can even upload screenshots as a reference to guide the AI towards what you're envisioning. Once you're happy with something, you can export it straight to Figma, sync it to GitHub, or deploy it to a custom domain. And if you're working with a team, there's a shared canvas for real-time collaboration. You can join the army of designers, engineers, tinkerers, and product teams already using Magic Patterns with the link in the description, which also gives the viewers of my channel a nice little discount. But now let's go back to the video, because now that we get to level 5, we start to blur the boundaries between product design and product strategy. And this is where you start to see the more important product decisions that shape how we use something. So let me show you how I personally used level 5 to build this. This is Flask. It's my own company and my own product. It's a video collaboration tool where you can collaborate on videos, record comments, and share your screen, and all of the comments appear visually right on the video's timeline. Now, for every comment, we need to give out key information that we cannot miss. For example, who created the comment, Enrico in this case, when this was added, or which timestamp it's referencing in the video. You also need a way to mark the comment as done. Now, the most basic approach that any designer would take is this. Find a nice way to lay them out, and you're done. For example, this is what my main competitor does. You have all the info right here, and you can mark a comment as done right there. But instead, what if we take a level 5 strategic approach to this, where we don't just think about how to arrange things visually, but how to architect the logic of the entire app to make this all much more elegant. For example, instead of deciding that this is a done toggle, why don't we create the general purpose tagging system, where each element can have custom tags, and then we'll create a default one called done and another one called important, so we can show users that you can actually have more than one at a time. And now these are not fixed in place. If you don't like done and you want to use it for something else, you can just delete it. But as people started to request more and more features, they wanted to be able to filter by user, or by custom tag, or by creation date, and it was getting so complicated. So instead, we're gonna make one structural design change and say that everything is a tag. So now the creator becomes a tag. The creation time becomes a tag. Even the link timestamp becomes a tag. Now, these are not editable by the user, but watch what happens. Now I can create a filtering system that filters by multiple types of tags in the same place, and it all feels logical. Now I don't need to have a dedicated row up top with its own layout. I can just have a list of tags. And now, a while later, I had to build a system to notify users of new comments that got added since they last visited. Normally, I would have to create an entirely new view to show these comments. But now that we made this structural design decision that everything is a tag, you can see that I just need to add a tag called new to the comments. And clicking here will just trigger a filter for that tag, which uses all the existing stuff that we already built before. Having a great structural design in the logic of how your app works makes everything else simpler. That's why, in a similar way to Flask, Notion took the decision to make everything a page. Even though it might be displayed as a calendar, or a feed, or a table, everything is a page. Or why Slack decided that everything is a channel. These are all examples of level 5. But at level 6 is where we start to leave product design as you think about it and start to enter the realm of product strategy. See, for example, video has been around forever. You can record yourself on your phone, you can have a video call on Zoom, you can upload to YouTube. Video is solved. We don't need any more video products. But then Loom came along and said, what if video wasn't for entertainment or for live calls, but for replacing meetings? What if instead of scheduling 30 minutes with your team, you just record a 3-minute video and send it out? They didn't invent video. They didn't invent recording. They didn't invent players. They reframed what video is for. And this little reframe built a company that Atlassian bought for $975 million. Or take Superhuman. Email has been around for decades. Gmail is free. What could you possibly do here? Well, Superhuman reframed email from inbox you need to manage to the fastest email out there. They added keyboard shortcuts for everything. They show you how long it takes to get through your inbox. They gamified going to inbox zero. And that's how they charge $30 a month for it. This is what level 6 is all about. The technology doesn't change. The framing doesn't change. Hell, the design might not even change. But the right strategic decision here can create billions of dollars worth of company. And now we finally get to level 7. This is Steve Jobs kind of territory.
Get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen.
See, at the time, this sounded insane. BlackBerry was king, physical keyboards were essential. The idea that you could type accurately on a touchscreen was considered fantasy. And here's the thing, it wasn't even a new idea. In 1994, a company called General Magic spun off from Apple and shipped the Sonic Magic Link, a handheld device with a touchscreen where you could do email, calendar, notes, the first smartphone 13 years before the iPhone. And it flopped. So what is the difference here? It's the same vision, the same bet, but a completely different outcome. The difference was everything underneath. General Magic, just like Steve Jobs a few years later, had level 7. It's a crazy product vision, something that completely changes things, but they didn't have all the layers underneath. And the difference between Steve Jobs and the iPhone team and everyone else is all the levels underneath. It's going to level 6 and reframing the phone from a device that makes calls to a computer in your pocket. Not a phone with apps, but apps with a phone. It's going back to level 5. The structural decision that everything is an app. No file system, no complex desktop-like UI. Everything is in this neat grid of apps. It's going back to level 4, the defaults. The App Store ships with Apple's apps front and center. Safari defaults to Google. The home button always takes you home. And of course, you need level 3, the technical innovation. Capacitive multi-touch that actually works. Gorilla Glass that doesn't break. A battery that lasts a day. And going back to level 2, the interactions, inventing pinch to zoom, slide to unlock, the rubber band bouncy feel when you scroll too far. And all the way to level 1, the details. The squircles on every icon, the weight of the animation. And Ken Cosienta, an engineer with a deadline, figured out that you need to make the invisible hitboxes of the keyboard dynamically bigger based on the letter you were typing, otherwise your keyboard wouldn't work. But what you saw is just the beginning. This video is part of a series where we go behind the scenes of the design, engineering and psychology of the tech that we use every day, and how even things that look so simple and stupid hide an absurd amount of complexity. And you can find the next video right here.